Move, you charity case hood rat, before we teach you how things work here. Brett Halford's voice exploded through the hallway as he slapped Michaela Rivers' books from her hands, the pages skittering beneath his spotless sneaker. Before she could straighten, he stepped in close and drove his knee viciously into her side, folding her against the lockers as students raised their phones, eager to capture her humiliation. Brett leaned down, his breath hot with contempt, and whispered, "New black girls don't last long in our halls." Michaela's ribs throbbed, her vision tightening at the edges, but she refused to break in front of him. Brett Halford had no idea he had just kneed a state champion. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The morning sun streamed through the high school's windows, casting long shadows across the freshly waxed floors. Michaela Rivers adjusted her backpack strap, her heart pounding as she stepped through the main entrance. She'd been the new student before, but something felt different here. The stairs were colder, more deliberate. Students lined the hallway like silent guards, their eyes following her every move. Some whispered behind their hands, others didn't bother hiding their scrutiny. Michaela kept her chin up, remembering her mother's words from that morning. "Stand tall, baby. You earned your place here." The whispers grew louder as she passed. "That's the new girl. Did you see what they're saying online? Can't believe they let her transfer here." Michaela's fingers tightened around her schedule, but she kept walking, her sneakers squeaking against the floor. She'd promised her mother no trouble. This scholarship was their chance at a better life, even if it meant being one of the few black students in this suburban school. The crowd ahead parted like a curtain, revealing 3 students blocking her path. Brett Halford stood in the center, his Letterman jacket hanging loose on his shoulders, flanked by Kelsey Ward and Logan Fisk. Brett's smirk made Michaela's stomach turn. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," Brett announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice dripped with mock politeness. "The scholarship case." Kelsey giggled, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone. "Didn't anyone tell her about knowing her place?" Michaela took a deep breath, trying to step around them. "I'm just trying to get to class." Logan moved to block her path, his massive frame casting a shadow over her. "Maybe you didn't hear right. Brett's talking to you." "Please move," Michaela said firmly, her years of karate training screaming at her to maintain her stance, ready her defense. But she couldn't. Not here. Not now. Brett stepped closer, invading her space. "Or what? You gonna do something about it?" The first shove caught her off guard, sending her backward into the lockers with a metallic bang. Pain shot through her shoulder, but training kicked in automatically. As Brett threw a wild punch, Michaela's body moved on instinct, blocking the strike and redirecting his momentum. Logan charged in, but years of muscle memory took over. Michaela used his own weight against him, executing a perfect hip throw that sent him crashing to the floor. Kelsey rushed forward, and Michaela's elbow came up defensively, catching the girl in the chest and stopping her advance. Gasps echoed through the hallway. Students pulled out phones, recording everything. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as everyone processed what they'd just witnessed. "She's crazy!" Kelsey shrieked, backing away. "Did you see that?" Brett's face turned red with rage and embarrassment. "Get her!" They attacked together this time, coordinated in their anger. A fist caught Michaela's ribs from behind. Another strike clipped her jaw. She blocked what she could, but they had numbers and surprise on their side. "Not so tough now, are you?" Brett taunted as Michaela stumbled. Logan grabbed her arms, pinning them behind her back. Kelsey landed a slap across her face that stung like fire. Michaela could have broken free, could have unleashed years of tournament-winning techniques, but her mother's voice echoed in her head. "We can't afford any mistakes here." The next few moments became a blur of pain and humiliation. Brett's fist connected with her stomach, driving the air from her lungs. She doubled over, falling to her knees as the attacks continued. Through it all, she saw the forest of phones pointed at her, recording every second of her defeat. "Welcome to Riverside High," Brett spat, stepping back as footsteps approached rapidly. "What's going on here?" A security officer's voice boomed through the hallway. "Everyone back up! Back up now!" The crowd scattered like startled birds, phones disappearing into pockets. Officer Ramirez pushed through the remaining students, his face tight with concern, as he saw Michaela on the ground. "Miss Rivers, can you stand?" Michaela nodded, pushing herself up despite the pain shooting through her body. She could taste blood where her lip had split, and her ribs screamed in protest, but she refused to show weakness. Brett, Kelsey, and Logan stood off to the side, their faces masks of innocent concern. Brett even had the audacity to step forward. "She just freaked out, officer. Started attacking people for no reason. We were defending ourselves." Officer Ramirez's eyes narrowed, but he kept his voice professional. "We'll sort this out later. Miss Rivers, let's get you to the nurse's office." As the officer guided her down the hallway, Michaela caught sight of her reflection in a classroom window. Her braids were disheveled, her new shirt was torn, and a bruise was already forming on her cheek. But her eyes were steel, unyielding. Behind her, she heard Brett's laugh, followed by Kelsey's stage whisper, "Daddy will take care of everything. He always does." The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before her, as Officer Ramirez led her toward the nurse's office. Students peeked out of classrooms, their phones still recording, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and indifference. But Michaela kept walking, each step a silent promise to herself. She might be bruised, but she wasn't broken. Not even close. The administrative office felt too small, its beige walls closing in as Michaela pressed an ice pack against her throbbing cheek. The vinyl chair squeaked beneath her as she shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make her ribs ache. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking each minute she sat there alone. Officer Ramirez stood by the door, his posture relaxed but alert. He studied Michaela with a thoughtful expression, as if trying to place her face. Suddenly, his eyes widened with recognition. "You competed in the Regional Self-Defense Expo last spring, didn't you?" he asked quietly, keeping his voice low enough that it wouldn't carry beyond the room. Michaela tensed, then nodded slightly. "I thought so. 3rd-degree black belt, if I remember correctly. State champion." He moved closer, speaking even more softly. "You want to file charges? What they did, that was assault. We have witnesses." Before Michaela could respond, the door burst open. Assistant Principal Halford stormed in, his face flushed with artificial concern. His expensive suit seemed at odds with the shabby office furniture. "What's this I hear about a fight on the first day?" His voice boomed through the small space. "This is completely unacceptable." Brett sauntered in behind his father, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. His knuckles were red from the punches he'd thrown, but no one seemed to notice. "She just went crazy, Dad," Brett said, his voice dripping with false innocence. "We were trying to welcome her, and she snapped, started throwing people around. Ask anyone." Michaela sat up straighter, wincing at the pain in her side. "That's not true. They cornered me. They attacked first. There were dozens of witnesses with phones." Now, Halford cut her off, raising his hands in a placating gesture that felt more like a dismissal. "Let's not make accusations we can't prove. From what I understand, this was clearly a mutual altercation." "Mutual?" Officer Ramirez stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, I saw—" "Thank you, Officer Ramirez," Halford interrupted. "I'll handle this from here." Through the office window, Michaela could see students gathered in the hallway, whispering and pointing at their phones. One girl looked up, caught Michaela's eye, and quickly turned away, deleting something from her screen. "The videos," Michaela said. "Everyone was recording. They'll show what really happened." Brett's smirk grew wider. "What videos?" As if on cue, frustrated voices rose from the hallway. "It's gone." "Mine too." "The whole thing just disappeared." Halford cleared his throat. "Our school has a strict policy about recording on campus. Any unauthorized videos are automatically removed from our network. For everyone's privacy, of course." The door opened again, and Michaela's mother rushed in, still wearing her hospital scrubs. Her eyes immediately went to Michaela's injuries, then narrowed dangerously. "What happened to my daughter?" she demanded, moving to Michaela's side. "Who did this?" "Mrs. Rivers," Halford said smoothly. "I understand your concern, but let's discuss this calmly. It seems your daughter was involved in an unfortunate incident." "Incident?" Michaela's mother touched the bruise forming on Michaela's cheek. "This looks like an assault to me." "Mom," Michaela started, but Halford spoke over her. "Mrs. Rivers, I need to be clear. While we welcome all students at Riverside High, we have certain expectations. Students who provoke conflicts—" "Provoke?" Michaela's mother's voice could have cut steel. "My daughter was attacked." "That's not how others saw it," Brett interjected, his face a mask of concern. "She was really aggressive. Maybe she's not used to our school's culture." Officer Ramirez shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the lies, but Halford shot him a warning look. "Perhaps," Halford suggested, his tone condescending, "Michaela needs time to adjust, to learn how to fit in better. Avoid provoking others with confrontational behavior." The message was clear. Michaela was the problem. Not the attackers. Not the system protecting them. Her. "We're done here," Michaela's mother announced, helping Michaela stand. "And this isn't over." They walked out of the office together, Michaela's mother's arm protective around her shoulders. In the hallway, Kelsey Ward leaned against a locker, playing with her phone. As they passed, she deliberately bumped into Michaela's injured side. "Welcome to your new life," Kelsey whispered, sweet venom in her voice. The drive home was quiet, tension filling the car. Michaela's mother gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went pale. They both knew what this meant. Another school, another chance for a fresh start, potentially slipping away. Later that evening, in the privacy of her bedroom, Michaela moved through her stretches. Each movement was precise, controlled, despite the pain in her ribs. She didn't flinch when her muscles protested, didn't stop when her bruises throbbed. The setting sun cast long shadows across her bedroom floor as she flowed from one position to the next. Her mother had always taught her that discipline meant doing what needed to be done, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. A notification buzzed on her phone, another anonymous message telling her to watch her back. She ignored it, focusing instead on her breathing, on maintaining perfect form. With each stretch, each controlled movement, she reinforced what she already knew. They might have won today's fight, but they hadn't broken her spirit. Her reflection in the bedroom mirror showed her bruises clearly now, dark against her skin in the fading light. But her eyes were clear, focused, unafraid. She moved through another stretch, feeling her muscles warm, her body remember its strength. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as Michaela sat at the breakfast table, absently stirring her cereal. Her phone buzzed again, the 20th notification since she'd woken up. Her mother glanced over from where she was packing her lunch, concern etched on her face. "You don't have to look at those, baby." But Michaela knew she did. She needed to know what they were saying about her. Opening her social media, her stomach clenched. The screen filled with edited clips from yesterday's attack. But these versions were different. Cut and spliced, They showed only the moments when she'd defended herself, erasing the initial assault completely. New girl goes crazy on first day. Watch this psycho attack innocent students. This is why we need better screening for transfer students. The comments were worse. Anonymous accounts with generic profile pictures spewed hatred. She's obviously violent and dangerous. Typical aggressive behavior. No surprise there. Animals like this don't belong in our school. Michaela's spoon clattered against the bowl. Her mother was at her side instantly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Remember what we talked about," her mother said softly. "They want a reaction. Don't give them one." The walk to her first class felt like moving through a hostile crowd. Students who'd witnessed the attack yesterday now turned away, avoiding eye contact. Others stared openly, whispering behind their hands. A group of girls near the water fountain huddled around a phone, glancing up at her and giggling. Brett, Kelsey, and Logan held court by the main lockers, their voices deliberately loud. "You know what I think," Brett announced as Michaela approached. "I think wild animals need leashes, for public safety." Kelsey's sharp laugh cut through the hallway. "Maybe we should start a petition. Get some cages installed." "Careful," Logan added, flexing his shoulders. "I heard they bite when cornered." Students around them laughed nervously, some looking uncomfortable but none speaking up. Michaela kept walking, her face carefully neutral despite the rage burning in her chest. She'd promised her mother no reactions, no matter what they said. Between classes, the harassment escalated. Logan emerged from nowhere in the crowded hallway, driving his shoulder hard into her back as he passed. The impact sent her stumbling forward, her books scattering across the floor. Before she could gather them, Kelsey walked by, deliberately kicking one of the textbooks further down the hall. "Oops," Kelsey said sweetly, then threw a crumpled paper ball that bounced off Michaela's head. "Sorry, my aim must be off today." Michaela's hands shook as she picked up her books, but she kept her movements slow and controlled. Every eye was on her, waiting for an outburst, hoping for a reaction they could film and edit and use as more proof of her violence. During lunch, she found a quiet corner of the library, needing space from the constant stares and whispers. Officer Ramirez appeared between the shelves, his presence casual but purposeful. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, pretending to check the titles on a nearby shelf. "I'm fine," Michaela replied automatically. "No, you're not, but you're handling it well." He pulled a book from the shelf, opening it as if showing her something. "Something about this doesn't add up. The speed of the video removals, the coordinated social media campaign, the immediate administrative involvement. It's too organized." Michaela looked up sharply. "You think someone planned this?" "I think," he said carefully, replacing the book, "that nothing at this school happens without Assistant Principal Halford knowing about it. And I think his son has a history that keeps disappearing." A group of students entered the library, and Officer Ramirez straightened up. "Stay focused," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "And remember, everything leaves a trail, if you know where to look." The rest of the day dragged on endlessly. In chemistry, someone had scrawled "Danger Violent" on her assigned lab station. During PE, no one would partner with her for exercises. Even teachers seemed wary, watching her with suspicious eyes, as if expecting an explosion of violence at any moment. By the time the final bell rang, Michaela felt drained. The constant tension of restraining herself, of maintaining perfect composure while enduring endless provocations, had left her exhausted. But as she walked to her locker, something Officer Ramirez said kept echoing in her mind. Everything leaves a trail. In her bedroom that evening, Michaela pulled out a fresh notebook. On the first page, she wrote the date and began documenting everything: the social media posts, the disappeared videos, the hallway incidents, the witnesses, the exact words used. She noted times, locations, and any staff members present. Her hand moved steadily across the page, recording each detail with precise clarity. This wasn't just a diary. It was evidence. And somewhere in all these random attacks and coordinated harassment, there had to be a pattern, a trail leading back to whoever was really pulling the strings. The setting sun cast long shadows across her desk as she wrote. But Michaela didn't stop until she'd captured everything. 6 pages filled with neat handwriting, creating an undeniable record of the day's events. She couldn't fight back physically, not yet, but she could build a case they couldn't ignore or edit away. The morning light barely reached the dim hallway as Michaela held her phone steady, documenting the fresh damage to her locker. Her hands trembled slightly as she zoomed in on the crude words carved into the metal, making sure the timestamp was visible in the frame. The jagged letters spelled out slurs she refused to read aloud, each one carved deep enough to ensure they couldn't be easily removed. Evidence number 7, she muttered, noting the time and date in her documentation notebook. Other students hurried past, some slowing to stare but none stopping to help or comment. The metallic smell of the exposed scratches mixed with the usual school scents of floor cleaner and old textbooks. A commotion from around the corner caught her attention. She recognized Brett's voice, sharp with threat and authority. "Listen up, you little nobody," Brett was saying. "I saw you talking to the new girl yesterday. That stops now." Michaela edged closer, keeping her phone recording. Through the gap between lockers, she could see Brett looming over a Latino freshman who pressed himself against the wall, trying to appear smaller. "I didn't," the freshman stammered, clutching his books like a shield. "We just had to partner in math." "I don't care what you had to do," Brett snapped, slamming his palm against the locker beside the boy's head. The crash echoed through the hallway. "You don't mess with her. You don't talk to her. You don't even look at her. Got it?" The freshman nodded frantically, his eyes darting around for help that wouldn't come. Brett leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that Michaela's phone barely picked up. "Because if you do, what happens to her happens to you. And trust me, what's coming next is gonna make yesterday look like a welcome party." The morning dragged by slowly, tension building with each class period. Michaela kept her phone ready, documenting every whispered comment and sideways glance. By lunch, her notebook had 3 new pages of incidents, times, and witnesses. The cafeteria buzzed with typical midday chaos as Michaela waited in line for her food. She could feel Brett's group watching her from their usual table, their attention like a physical weight on her back. Keeping her movements deliberate and calm, she filled her tray and turned toward the less crowded tables near the windows. "Hey, new girl," Kelsey called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We feel just terrible about yesterday." Brett stood up, spreading his arms wide in mock sincerity. "Yeah, we should all start fresh. Clean slate and all that." "Real friendly-like," Logan added with a smirk. Students nearby fell quiet, sensing the building confrontation. Michaela continued walking, her grip tightening on her lunch tray. She was nearly past their table when Brett stepped directly into her path. "Oh, come on," he said, still wearing that fake smile. "Don't be rude. We're trying to apologize here." Michaela met his gaze steadily. "Move. Or what? You'll go crazy again?" Brett's smile twisted into something uglier. "Show everyone what you really are." In one smooth motion, he slapped the bottom of her tray upward. Food scattered across the floor as the tray clattered away. Several students gasped, others laughed nervously. Brett's smirk widened, then froze, as Michaela's hand locked around his wrist. The cafeteria went silent. Brett tried to pull away, but Michaela's grip was like steel. She could feel the bones in his wrist grinding together, could see the moment real fear flickered across his face. He'd expected her to cry, to run, to break down. Anything but this controlled strength that held him immobile. Logan lunged forward, trying to break her grip. Without releasing Brett, Michaela simply shifted her weight and stepped aside. Logan's momentum carried him forward, his feet tangling with the chairs. He stumbled hard, barely catching himself before falling face first into the scattered food. "Let go!" Brett gritted out, his voice tight with pain and growing panic. Michaela held on for one more second, letting him feel exactly how much power she was holding back. Then she released him, just as the cafeteria monitor turned toward the commotion. Brett stumbled backward, rubbing his wrist, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. "You're dead," he hissed. But he kept his distance now. "You hear me? You're absolutely dead." Kelsey helped Logan up, their previous confidence shaken but quickly hardening into deeper anger. The surrounding students whispered furiously, some already holding up phones to record. Michaela knew there would be new edited videos by evening, new posts twisting the story, new accusations about her violent tendencies. But she'd seen that flash of fear in Brett's eyes. For just a moment, the mask had slipped, revealing the coward underneath all his posturing. She noted the exact time and details in her notebook while waiting for the janitor to finish cleaning up her spilled lunch. The rest of the day passed in a blur of hostile stares and whispered threats. As final period ended, Michaela lingered by the water fountain, pretending to check her phone, while Brett's group gathered nearby. "Round 2, Brett was saying, his voice tight with suppressed fury. "We show her what happens when you mess with us. For real this time." "What about your dad?" Kelsey asked. "Won't he be mad if—" "Dad's the one who said to handle it," Brett cut her off. "Said we need to put her in her place before she causes more trouble." Logan cracked his knuckles. "When?" "Soon," Brett replied. "Real soon. And this time, we do it right." The old community center gym smelled of dust and disuse. Dim light filtered through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the worn mats Michaela had dragged from storage. The hollow thud of her fists striking the hanging bag echoed through the empty space. Each punch was precise, controlled, nothing like the wild aggression Brett and his friends had accused her of. Sweat dripped down her face as she worked through her routine. Right jab, left cross, pivot, block. The movements were automatic after years of training, but tonight they felt heavier. Each strike carried the weight of that morning's threats, the freshman's terrified face, Brett's sneering confidence. The creak of the old door made her pause. Officer Ramirez stepped inside, his uniform dark against the faded walls. His expression was grim. "I thought I might find you here," he said, walking over to steady the swaying bag. "Your mom mentioned you used to train at the community center back home." Michaela unwrapped her hands, studying the officer's concerned face. "Something's wrong." He nodded slowly. "I overheard Brett and his friends after school. They're planning to jump Marco Rodriguez tomorrow, that freshman from your math class." "The one Brett threatened this morning," Michaela said, her jaw tightening. She grabbed her water bottle, the plastic crinkling in her grip. "Why him?" "Marco's new here too. His family just moved from Mexico last month. Brett's been targeting kids like him all year, ones who can't or won't fight back." Officer Ramirez ran a hand over his face. "Your arrival disrupted their usual pattern. Now they're trying to reassert control. By beating up a 14-year-old? The anger in her voice echoed off the walls. "It's not just the physical attacks," Ramirez continued. "Brett's father enables everything. Any complaints disappear. Security footage gets erased. Students who speak up face retaliation." He gestured around the empty gym. "That's why you're training here alone instead of at the school facilities." Michaela's phone buzzed. A new email from Assistant Principal Halford glowed on the screen. She read it aloud, her voice tight. Ms. Rivers, this email serves as a reminder that any further disruptions or aggressive behavior will result in immediate disciplinary action, including possible suspension or expulsion. Your scholarship status requires exemplary conduct. Consider this an official warning. Assistant Principal Halford. Perfect timing, Ramirez said darkly. They're trying to box you in. If you defend yourself or others, you lose your scholarship. If you do nothing, they win, Michaela finished. She turned back to the punching bag, striking it with controlled precision. But they don't know what I know about fighting. Which is? That sometimes the best defense isn't a punch or kick. She demonstrated a blocking technique, her movements fluid and precise. It's about position, timing, using your opponent's momentum against them. She walked through the morning's cafeteria confrontation, analyzing each moment. Brett telegraphs his moves. He tenses his right shoulder before striking. Logan overcommits, leaves himself off balance. Kelsey hangs back until she thinks it's safe. Officer Ramirez watched her work through different scenarios. You've been holding back. Had to. They're looking for any excuse. Michaela practiced a swift redirection technique that could turn an attacker's force against them without striking back. But there are ways to stop them without throwing a single punch. She demonstrated another move, this one designed to control an aggressor's movement without causing harm. See? If Brett tries to grab someone, this simple twist puts him in a lock. He either backs off or falls down. Either way, he can't claim he was attacked. Smart, Ramirez nodded. But Halford will still try to twist it against you. That's why I need witnesses, videos, evidence they can't erase. She paused, considering. And maybe something else, too. Moving to her bag, Michaela pulled out her notebook. Pages of documented incidents, times, locations, and witnesses filled the margins. Everything they've done, everything they've said, it's all here. Every threat, every slur, every accident that wasn't really an accident. A paper trail, Ramirez said approvingly. Hard to delete that. Exactly. And tomorrow, she returned to the mat, running through defensive stances. Tomorrow I make sure Marco doesn't become another statistic in their pattern. Hours passed as Michaela refined her strategy. Each movement was practiced until it became instinct. Each scenario planned for multiple outcomes. The gym grew darker, but she continued working, driven by the memory of that freshman's fear and Brett's cruel satisfaction. Officer Ramirez helped spot her through more complex maneuvers, occasionally offering insights from his law enforcement training. They discussed legal boundaries, witness positioning, the importance of clear documentation. Finally, exhausted but focused, Michaela gathered her things. The old gym seemed to hold its breath as she took one last look around. Tomorrow would test everything: her training, her control, her resolve to protect others without compromising her principles. No one else gets hurt, she said firmly, more promise than statement. Not while I'm here. Officer Ramirez held the door as she stepped out into the night. Be careful, Michaela. They're desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. She nodded, shouldering her gym bag. The weight of her documentation notebook pressed against her side, a reminder of all that was at stake. Tomorrow would come soon enough, bringing its challenges and choices. But tonight, in the quiet darkness outside the old community center, Michaela's determination burned brighter than her fatigue. The lunch period sun beat down on the cracked pavement behind the cafeteria. Michaela kept her distance, following the sound of Brett's laughter around the corner. Her steps were silent, measured, each movement calculated from years of training. The familiar weight of her phone pressed against her hip, ready to record if needed. Through the gaps between buildings, she watched Brett and his crew surround Marco Rodriguez. The freshman's back hit the brick wall, his brown eyes wide with terror. His lunch tray clattered to the ground spilling milk across his shoes. "What's wrong, Marco?" Brett towered over him, shoulders squared. "Can't even look at me right? That's disrespectful." Logan and Kelsey flanked Brett, cutting off any escape routes. Their shadows stretched long across the pavement, 3 predators closing in on their prey. I didn't." Marco's voice shook. His English, still uncertain after just a month in the country, failed him under pressure. "You didn't what?" Brett grabbed Marco's collar, shoving him harder against the wall. "Can't even speak English right? Maybe you shouldn't be here at all." Kelsey's sharp laugh cut through the air. "Look at him shake. Pathetic." "Apologize," Brett demanded, his knuckles white against Marco's shirt. "Say you're sorry for disrespecting me." Michaela had seen enough. She stepped out from behind the corner, her footsteps deliberate. The concrete scraped under her shoes, drawing their attention. "Let him go," she said, voice steady and clear. Her hands stayed loose at her sides, ready but not threatening. Brett's grip tightened on Marco's collar. "Stay out of this. It's none of your business." "Marco," Michaela said, ignoring Brett completely. "Walk away. Now." Something in her tone, the absolute certainty, the quiet authority, made Brett's fingers loosen just enough. Marco ducked free, stumbling past Logan and breaking into a run. "You stupid!" Brett spun toward Michaela, his right shoulder tensing, the tell she'd been watching for. His fist shot out in a wild haymaker. Michaela's block was textbook perfect. She deflected his arm aside, stepped in close, and drove a precise strike into his solar plexus. The impact was controlled, just enough force to drop Brett to one knee, driving the air from his lungs. Logan charged immediately, betting on his size advantage. But Michaela had been ready for this since day one. She shifted her weight, caught his momentum, and used his own force to flip him over her hip. He crashed onto his back, concrete knocking the wind out of him. "You witch!" Kelsey lunged forward, manicured nails slashing at Michaela's face. The sweep was almost gentle. A quick hook of Michaela's foot behind Kelsey's ankle, a subtle shift of balance, and gravity did the rest. Kelsey's designer jeans hit the pavement hard. In the sudden quiet, someone's phone camera clicked. Michaela caught a glimpse of a student ducking behind a corner, device still recording. Brett struggled to his feet, gasping. His face was red with humiliation and rage. You'll pay for this." "No," Michaela said simply. "I won't." Her stance remained relaxed, but ready. "Every move I just used was defensive. No strikes except when you attacked first. No permanent damage, just enough to stop you." Logan rolled to his side, groaning. His usual confidence had evaporated. "Brett, maybe we should—" "Shut up!" Brett's voice cracked. He took a step forward, fists clenched. Michaela didn't move. "Want to try again? I've got all lunch period to keep demonstrating the difference between fighting and bullying." Kelsey scrambled backward, her carefully styled hair now dusty from the fall. "Brett, let's go." "There are witnesses." That word, witnesses, seemed to penetrate Brett's anger. His eyes darted around, finally noticing the faces peering from windows, the phones partially hidden behind corners. Every second was being documented. "This isn't over," he snarled, but he was already backing away. "Yes," Michaela said quietly. "It is." She watched them retreat, noting how Logan kept glancing back nervously, how Kelsey's usual strut had turned into a stiff limp, how Brett's shoulders hunched with unfamiliar defeat. Only when they disappeared around the corner did Michaela let her guard down slightly. Her muscles hummed with contained energy. Every block and counter had been precisely controlled. No excessive force, no wild strikes, nothing that could be twisted into accusations of aggression. Just clean, technical self-defense. She turned toward the cafeteria entrance, already planning her next moves. Document everything while it was fresh. Check on Marco. Make sure the video evidence was secured before it could be deleted. Movement caught her eye. Assistant Principal Halford stood in his office window overlooking the side lot. His face was dark with fury as he glared down at her, phone already pressed to his ear. The sun reflected off the glass, momentarily obscuring his expression. But his message was clear. This confrontation had only shifted battlegrounds. Michaela walked back inside, her steps measured and calm. The lunch period crowd parted before her, whispers following in her wake. But these weren't the same fearful murmurs from her first day. Now there was something else in their voices. Respect, maybe. Or hope? She touched her phone, feeling the weight of her documented evidence. Halford could make his calls. Brett could nurse his bruised ego. The truth was already spreading, captured in video and witnesses, too many to silence or delete. For the first time since arriving at this school, Michaela felt the balance of power shifting. Not through violence or intimidation, but through careful preparation, perfect control, and the simple act of standing up, not just for herself, but for those who couldn't. The cafeteria door swung shut behind her as Halford's shadow disappeared from the window above. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school parking lot as Michaela pushed through the heavy metal doors. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, weighed down with the day's events. Officer Ramirez stood by his patrol car, his face serious as he motioned her over. "You handled that situation well," he said quietly when she approached. "Clean technique. No excessive force." "But it won't matter, will it?" Michaela's voice was tired. She'd been watching the whispers spread all afternoon, seeing the story twist with each retelling. Ramirez glanced around before speaking. "Halford's been busy. He called an emergency staff meeting right after lunch. Spent 40 minutes explaining how you're becoming a serious concern for school safety." Michaela's hands clenched. "I defended myself. I stopped them from hurting Marco." "I know. But Halford's good at what he does." Ramirez leaned against his car, keeping his voice low. "He's telling teachers you have a history of violence, saying your transfer here wasn't voluntary, making them scared to support you." "That's all lies." The words burst out before Michaela could stop them. "Of course they are. But he's been working this system for years." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "And this isn't the first time I've seen security footage mysteriously disappear after his son gets into trouble." Michaela processed this. "You mean he's deleted evidence before?" Ramirez nodded slowly. "Let's just say certain incidents involving Brett never made it to official reports. Files get corrupted. Cameras malfunction at convenient times. It's a pattern if you know where to look." A group of students walked past, and they fell silent until the footsteps faded. The parking lot was emptying quickly. Afternoon practice groups heading to their fields and courts. "Document everything," Ramirez continued. "Keep backup copies somewhere safe, and watch your back. They're not done retaliating." As if on cue, Michaela's phone buzzed. A text from another student. "You need to see your locker." Her stomach tightened. "I have to go." Ramirez straightened. "Remember, evidence first, reaction second. Don't give them anything they can use against you." Michaela hurried back inside, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty hallway. She heard them before she saw them. Brett's crew, their laughter bouncing off the metal lockers. They'd saved this for after the crowds left. She slowed her approach, staying just around the corner. Phones were out, recording as Brett and Logan tore papers from her locker. Homework assignments and notes fluttered to the floor while Kelsey sprayed something on the metal door. "Smile for the camera." Kelsey's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Little Miss Karate Champ needs to learn what happens when you mess with us." "You think you're tough?" Brett's voice was still rough from their earlier encounter. He kicked the scattered papers. "Let's see how tough you are when no one's around to film it." Got your back bruised, Brett? Logan snickered. Maybe we should bruise more than her locker next time. Shut up, Brett snapped. Just keep recording. I want her to see this. Michaela pulled out her own phone, carefully angling it around the corner. The video would be shaky, but the audio was clear. Threats, vandalism, all of it documented. Hey! A teacher's voice rang out from the other end of the hall. What are you doing? The group scattered, shoes squeaking on linoleum as they ran. Their laughter echoed behind them, mixed with promises of, "See you tomorrow, Michaela." She waited until they were gone before approaching her locker. The damage was extensive. Papers torn and scattered, crude words sprayed across the metal, her books dumped and kicked aside. But instead of anger, Michaela felt a strange calm. She took photos of everything, careful to document each detail. Other students passed by, some slowing to stare, others hurrying past with averted eyes. No one stopped to help. The message was clear. Speaking up meant becoming a target. She knelt to gather the torn papers, smoothing each one carefully before sliding them into a folder. Every rip, every crude drawing, every threatening note, all of it was evidence. The spray paint on her locker spelled out "animal" in dripping red letters. Oh dear. The same teacher who'd interrupted the vandalism finally approached. This is concerning behavior. Yes, it is, Michaela agreed calmly. I'd like to file a report. The teacher shifted uncomfortably. Well, without clear evidence of who did this. I have video, Michaela said, and witnesses. Perhaps we should discuss this with Assistant Principal Halford first, the teacher suggested, already backing away. These situations can be complicated. Michaela watched her retreat, understanding exactly how deep Halford's influence ran. The system wasn't just turning a blind eye, it was actively protecting the bullies while punishing anyone who fought back. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, painting long shadows across the vandalized locker. Michaela finished collecting her scattered belongings, carefully preserving every piece of evidence. The halls were empty now, the silence heavy with unspoken threats. She pushed through the front doors into the fading day. The sunset painted the sky in deep oranges and reds, beautiful but ominous. Each step home felt heavier than the last as she realized how the trap was closing around her. Halford controlled the narrative. Brett controlled the social hierarchy, and the system itself seemed designed to protect them both, while crushing anyone who dared to challenge the status quo. The weight of her backpack pulled at her shoulders, filled with torn papers and documented threats. Evidence that might not matter. Truth that could be buried. Justice that seemed to slip further away with each passing hour. The sunset deepened to crimson as Michaela walked, casting her shadow long across the sidewalk. She felt the pressure building from all sides, the administration's manipulation, the bullies' escalating threats, the community's growing hostility. The system wasn't just failing her, it was actively working against her. Each step took her closer to home, but further from any clear solution. The red sky above seemed to mirror the spray paint on her locker, a warning of storms to come. The morning sunlight streamed through classroom windows as Michaela sat in her AP chemistry teacher's office. Mrs. Bennett shuffled papers on her desk, refusing to meet Michaela's eyes. "I'm afraid we need to discuss your placement," Mrs. Bennett said, her voice unnaturally flat. "The administration feels, well, given recent events." "Recent events?" Michaela kept her voice steady. "My grades are excellent. I've turned in every assignment." Mrs. Bennett glanced at the door before continuing. "This isn't about your academic performance. There are concerns about classroom dynamics." "You mean Brett Halford's concerns?" Michaela said quietly. The teacher flinched at the name. "I'm not at liberty to discuss other students. The decision has already been made. You'll be transferred to regular chemistry, effective immediately." Before Michaela could protest, there was a knock. Her AP literature teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, stood in the doorway, looking equally uncomfortable. "My office next," he said softly. Similar discussion. Michaela's chest tightened as she followed him down the hall. 2 classes. They were systematically removing her from advanced placement courses, the very programs that had attracted her to this school. Mr. Rodriguez's office felt smaller than usual, the walls of books closing in as he delivered the same rehearsed speech. Concerns about classroom environment. Administrative decision. No room for appeal. "I don't understand," Michaela said, though she did. "My essays are among the highest scored in class." "Your work is excellent," Mr. Rodriguez admitted, finally meeting her eyes. "But my hands are tied. I'm sorry." The morning classes blurred past. Students whispered as she gathered her belongings from AP Chemistry, smirking as she was escorted to her new, regular classroom. The material was weeks behind what she'd been studying. In literature, her empty desk stood like a victory flag for those who wanted her gone. Lunch period arrived with cruel precision. Michaela sat alone, trying to focus on her food when shadows fell across her table. Brett's crew had surrounded her, taking seats with casual menace. "Having fun in your new classes?" Kelsey's whisper dripped poison. "Guess you're not so special after all." "No phones out today," Brett observed, leaning close. "No audience, no one to show off for." Logan reached over, flicking Michaela's ear hard. She didn't flinch, didn't give them the reaction they wanted. Her mother's words echoed, "Stay focused on your goals. Don't let them drag you down." "What's wrong, champ?" Brett's voice was soft, but sharp. "Lost your fighting spirit?" Kelsey accidentally knocked her water bottle over, sending liquid spreading across Michaela's lunch tray. "Oops. So clumsy of me." Michaela's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out under the table, seeing Officer Ramirez's message. "Stay steady. Working on something." She took a deep breath, letting their taunts wash over her. Each insult, each small assault, was another piece of evidence, another link in the chain of harassment they were building. "Maybe she's too stupid for AP classes anyway," Logan suggested loudly. Several nearby students snickered. "Or maybe she's finally learning her place," Brett said, standing up. "Right where she belongs." They left her with ruined lunch and wet books, their message clear. This was only the beginning. Michaela dried her materials as best she could, documenting the damage with quick photos. The rest of the day passed in a haze of hostile stares and whispered comments. When the final bell rang, Michaela's phone lit up with a text from her mother. "Come straight home. Need to talk." She found her mother in the kitchen, still in her nurse's scrubs, gripping a cup of coffee with tension in every line of her body. "Someone called the hospital today," her mother said without preamble. "Made accusations about my work performance. Said I was negligent with patients." Michaela's stomach dropped. "What? That's ridiculous. You're one of their best nurses." "My supervisor knows that." But she had to document the complaint. Her mother's knuckles were white around the coffee cup. Anonymous caller, very specific about dates and times, all false, but detailed enough to require investigation. "It's them," Michaela said. "Halford and his son. They're trying to pressure us out. By threatening my job." Her mother's voice was tight with anger. "They think if they can't break you at school, they'll attack our livelihood." Michaela sat heavily at the kitchen table, the day's events crashing down. "They removed me from AP classes today. No explanation, no appeal, just pushed out. Classes you earned your way into." Her mother set the coffee down with careful control. "Opportunities you worked for." They're systematic about it, Michaela realized. First, the social isolation. Then, academic barriers. Now, economic threats. They want us gone, Not just me from the school, but our whole family from the district. Her mother reached across the table, gripping her hand. We're not going anywhere. This is our home now. And we don't run from bullies, no matter how powerful they think they are. Michaela squeezed back, drawing strength from her mother's determination. Through the kitchen window, she could see their neighbors watching, probably already aware of the complaints against her mother. The pressure was building from all sides: school, work, community. A calculated campaign to make them feel unwelcome, unsafe, unwanted. They picked the wrong family to intimidate, her mother said firmly. We've faced worse than this. We'll face it together. The afternoon light cast their shadows long across the kitchen floor as mother and daughter sat in shared resolve. The system might be rigged against them, but they weren't backing down. Not from Halford, not from Brett, not from any of it. Their home felt smaller somehow, surrounded by hostile forces, but it was still their fortress, and they would defend it, together. The evening sun had barely set when students began arriving at Michaela's house. They came in twos and threes, slipping through the front door quietly, as if afraid of being seen. Michaela's mother welcomed them with hot chocolate and cookies, understanding the importance of what they were about to do. Thanks for coming, Michaela said to the small group gathered in her living room. 7 students, all of whom had faced Brett's crew's cruelty in some form. Maria Rodriguez, a sophomore who'd been tracking the bullies' movements, opened her laptop. I got everything organized by date. Screenshots, texts, social media posts. And I've got the video, James whispered, pulling out his phone. He was the one who'd filmed the cafeteria fight. His hands shook slightly as he pulled up the footage. I was behind the recycling bins. They never saw me. The room fell silent as they watched. The video quality was surprisingly clear, showing Brett's initial attack, Michaela's controlled defense, and, most importantly, her restraint. There was no question who the aggressor was. This is exactly what we needed, Sarah Martinez said, leaning forward. She'd been one of Brett's earliest victims. You can see everything. The way they surrounded you first. How you only fought back when they attacked. Destiny Williams, who'd been documenting the online harassment, nodded. With timestamps and location markers, no one can claim this was edited or taken out of context. My cousin works in IT, Alex Thompson added. He showed me how to upload through secure channels. We can use VPNs and temporary accounts to spread it across different platforms. Michaela's mother brought in another round of hot chocolate. Just remember, be smart about this. Don't put yourselves at risk. They worked methodically through the evening. Maria created a timeline of events, starting with Michaela's first day. James extracted still frames from the video showing key moments. Sarah and Destiny drafted accompanying text explaining the pattern of harassment. Look at this, Alex said, pointing to his screen. Brett's previous victims started messaging me. They want to share their stories too. The living room hummed with quiet determination as they built their case. Each student added details, dates of incidents, witnesses' names, screenshots of threatening messages. The evidence mounted hour by hour. We should include the class removals, Maria suggested. Show how they're using the system against you. Michaela nodded, adding her AP class documentation to the file. And the complaint against my mother's job. This is bigger than just bullying, Sarah realized. It's systematic intimidation, protected by the administration. Around midnight, they began uploading. Alex coordinated the technical aspects, ensuring everything was anonymous and untraceable. They created multiple backup copies, storing them securely in case the originals were removed. It's live, Alex announced at 12:47 a.m., starting to share it now. They watched as the first reactions trickled in. Shares, comments, parents tagging other parents. The video began spreading through local community groups. Look, Destiny pointed excitedly. The neighborhood watch page is blowing up. People are furious. Messages of support started appearing. Other students came forward with similar stories. Parents demanded emergency school board meetings. The momentum built rapidly as midnight turned to early morning. "Brett's going to lose it when he sees this," James said, a mix of fear and satisfaction in his voice. "Let him," Sarah replied firmly. "He can't hurt us if we stand together." By the time the students left at 2 a.m., the video had over 1,000 shares. Michaela's mother hugged each of them as they departed, whispering thanks for supporting her daughter. The next morning, Michaela walked into school with her head high. The halls buzzed with conversation about the video. Students gathered in clusters, phones out, watching and rewatching the footage. "Did you see it? I can't believe they got away with this for so long." My mom called the superintendent's office. Brett's usual morning swagger was noticeably absent. When Michaela passed him in the hallway, he pressed himself against the lockers, avoiding eye contact. Logan and Kelsey were nowhere to be seen. In first period, Michaela's phone vibrated constantly with supportive messages from parents and community members. The local Parents Association had called an emergency meeting. 3 school board members demanded immediate investigation. Between classes, she spotted Brett arguing frantically with his father near the administrative offices. Halford's face was red with anger, but for once, it wasn't directed at Michaela. His son's protected status was crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. By lunch, the video had reached local news stations. Reporters gathered outside the school, requesting comments about the pattern of harassment and administrative cover-ups. Brett's crew avoided the cafeteria entirely. "This is incredible," Maria whispered during study hall. "My mother's on the PTA. They're calling for Halford's resignation." Support messages continued flooding in. Other students who'd left the school because of Brett came forward with their stories. The dam had broken. Years of protected bullying exposed in a single morning. Walking home that afternoon, Michaela felt lighter than she had in weeks. Students who'd previously avoided her now smiled and waved. A passing car honked in support, the driver giving her a thumbs up. The setting sun painted the sidewalk gold as she walked, a faint smile playing on her lips. For the first time since arriving at this school, momentum had shifted. The truth was out, impossible to bury or deny. Brett's reign of terror was ending, not with a fight, but with exposure to the light. The gentle autumn breeze carried the sound of rustling leaves as Michaela headed home, her smile growing stronger with each step. The power of truth and solidarity was proving stronger than any bully's fist or administrator's protection. Change was finally coming. The evening air had turned crisp as Michaela made her way to the community center gym. After the day's victories, she needed to clear her head and process everything. The old building stood quiet against the darkening sky, its familiar peeling paint and rusty sign a comfort after weeks of tension. Inside, the scent of old rubber mats and dust filled her nostrils as she wrapped her hands. The rhythmic thud of her fists against the punching bag echoed through the empty space. Left jab, right cross. Each impact helped settle her racing thoughts. Finally doing some real training? Brett's voice cut through the silence. Michaela spun around. Brett, Logan, and Kelsey blocked the main exit. She hadn't heard them come in. "Gym's closed," she said firmly, keeping her stance ready. "Not anymore," Logan growled, cracking his knuckles. Kelsey circled toward the back door. "Time for a private lesson." Before Michaela could react, they rushed her. Logan and Brett grabbed her arms while Kelsey shoved open the back door. They dragged her across the parking lot toward the school gym, her feet scraping concrete as she struggled. "Let go!" she twisted, but their grip was too tight. "Shut up!" Brett hissed, yanking harder. "Dad's waiting." They forced her through a propped open door into the dark school gym. Fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing Assistant Principal Halford standing by the basketball court, arms crossed. "Miss Rivers," he said coldly. "Causing trouble again, I see." Brett shoved her forward. She stumbled but kept her balance, eyes darting between all four opponents. "Your little video stunt?" Brett sneered. "Big mistake. The truth isn't a stunt," Michaela shot back. "Truth?" Kelsey laughed. "You mean your edited propaganda?" Logan stepped closer. "Nobody believes a scholarship charity case over real students." "Real students?" Michaela's voice shook with anger. "You mean entitled bullies who hide behind Daddy's protection?" "Watch your mouth," Halford snapped. "Your attitude is exactly why you don't belong here." Brett circled her like a shark. "Know what I heard? Your mom's hospital is reviewing her position. Would be shame if something happened to her job, especially with those new complaints." Michaela's hands clenched into fists. "Leave my mother out of this." "Or what?" Brett got in her face. "Your mom works night shifts, right? All alone in that dark parking lot?" Something snapped inside Michaela. Weeks of restraint evaporated. Her body shifted automatically into fighting stance, weight balanced, hands raised. "Touch my mother," she said quietly, "and you'll learn what I can really do." Brett's eyes widened at her transformation. He stepped back instinctively. "That's it!" Halford shouted. "She's threatening students!" Heavy footsteps pounded down the hallway. 2 campus police officers burst through the gym doors, weapons drawn. "Hands up!" one ordered. "Don't move!" "She attacked us!" Brett cried, masterfully playing victim. "We were just practicing basketball and she went crazy." "That's a lie," Michaela protested, as cold handcuffs closed around her wrists. "I saw everything," Halford declared. "She cornered these students and threatened violence. We have multiple witnesses." The officers pushed Michaela toward the exit while Halford continued. "She's suspended pending investigation. And we'll be pressing charges for assault and making terrorist threats." "You can't do this," Michaela struggled to stay calm. "Check the cameras." "Already checked," Halford smiled thinly. "Technical problems, unfortunately. No footage." They marched her through empty hallways to a small conference room that doubled as a holding cell. The handcuffs bit into her wrists as they forced her into a chair. "Wait here for your mother," an officer instructed. "Don't leave this room." The door closed with a final click. Michaela sat alone in the harsh fluorescent light, everything she'd built crumbling around her. The video evidence, community support, morning's victory, all destroyed by one carefully planned trap. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Probably her mother wondering where she was, but her cuffed hands couldn't reach it. The small room seemed to shrink with each passing minute, walls closing in as reality sank deeper. Suspended. Charged with assault. Her mother's job threatened, all because she dared to stand up to injustice. Tears of frustration burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Through the door's small window, she glimpsed Brett and his friends laughing with Halford in the hallway. Their staged performance had worked perfectly. Now they had what they wanted. She would be expelled, maybe even arrested, her future destroyed by false charges. The clock on the wall ticked endlessly. Each second stretched longer than the last as Michaela sat helpless, waiting for her mother to arrive and learn how thoroughly they'd been defeated. The handcuffs chafed her wrists, a constant reminder of how quickly justice could be twisted by those with power. Outside, the sun had fully set. Darkness pressed against the windows, matching the growing despair in Michaela's heart. Everything she'd fought for, every small victory, had been erased in a single cruel moment. She was right back where she started. Alone, targeted, and trapped in a system designed to protect the privileged while crushing anyone who dared to challenge them. The empty room echoed with silence, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock and the distant sound of her enemies' celebrating voices. Michaela stared at the blank wall, feeling the full weight of her isolation crash down upon her shoulders. The morning sun felt harsh as Michaela stepped out of the school's administrative building, her mother's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. Her wrists still bore red marks from the handcuffs, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her after a sleepless night in the holding room. "This isn't over," her mother whispered, squeezing her closer. "We'll fight this." Michaela nodded numbly, too drained to speak. The suspension papers in her hand felt like lead weights. 3 days of forced absence while they investigated the incident, though she knew Halford would use that time to bury any remaining evidence. "Ms. Rivers," Officer Ramirez's voice called out quietly from behind them. He stood near his patrol car, gesturing them over with urgent motions. Michaela's mother hesitated, positioning herself slightly in front of her daughter. "Haven't you people done enough?" "Please," Ramirez said softly. "I need to show you something. It's important." Something in his tone made Michaela touch her mother's arm. "It's okay, Mom. Officer Ramirez has been trying to help." They followed him to his car, where he pulled out a laptop. "I've been monitoring the security feeds ever since the first incident," he explained, typing quickly. "Halford thinks he erased everything, but he doesn't know about the backup system I installed last year." The screen flickered to life, showing the school gym from multiple angles. The timestamp read just hours before Michaela's arrest. Halford stood with Brett, their faces clear in the frame. "Make her snap first." Halford's voice came through with crystal clarity. "Scholarship kids break easy, especially when you threaten their family." "What about the cameras?" Brett asked. "Already handled. I'll wipe everything after. Just get her to throw the first punch, and we'll have grounds for expulsion." Michaela's mother gasped. "That's premeditated harassment. They planned the whole thing." Ramirez nodded grimly. "There's more." He switched to another clip showing Halford in his office, making phone calls. "He's the one who filed the anonymous complaints about your job, Ms. Rivers. And here's him deleting the original hallway footage from last week." "Why are you showing us this?" Michaela asked, hope beginning to stir beneath her exhaustion. "Because I submitted everything to the superintendent an hour ago," Ramirez replied, "and anonymously sent copies to 3 local news stations. Halford doesn't know yet." Michaela's mother gripped the car door. "You're sure it's safe to expose this? They'll know it came from inside." "Let them suspect," Ramirez said firmly. "I've documented every instance of misconduct for months. This was just the final piece I needed. They can't bury video evidence of an administrator orchestrating attacks on students." Fresh energy coursed through Michaela's tired body. "The freshmen they targeted last week. Do you have that footage too?" "Everything," Ramirez confirmed, "including Halford watching it happen and doing nothing. The superintendent is reviewing it all right now." "They'll try to discredit it," Michaela's mother warned. "They can try," Ramirez smiled slightly. "But I worked cybercrimes before school security. The authentication chain is solid. Plus, I've got archived copies of all the social media posts they used to smear Michaela, traced back to school computers." For the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, Michaela felt her breathing ease. "So what happens now?" "Now, you go home and rest," Ramirez instructed. "Let the system work for once. The superintendent has already called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. Just stay away from school until we contact you." Michaela's mother hugged her closer. "Thank you, officer, for everything. I've seen too many kids get hurt because people in power abuse their positions," Ramirez said quietly. "Not this time." They walked to their car, legs shaky with relief and lingering anxiety. As they pulled away, Michaela watched Halford stride confidently into the building, unaware his carefully constructed web of lies was about to collapse. At home, Michaela tried to sleep but couldn't settle. Her mind kept replaying the footage, hearing Halford's casual cruelty as he plotted to destroy her future. The red marks on her wrists had faded, but the memory of cold metal remained. Her phone buzzed periodically with messages from supportive classmates who'd heard rumors of her arrest. She responded briefly, unable to share what she knew was coming. The waiting felt endless. By late afternoon, her mother had fixed 3 different meals neither of them could eat. They sat together on the couch, watching the local news and jumping at every sound outside. "Whatever happens," her mother said softly, "I'm proud of you. You stood your ground without compromising who you are." Michaela squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry they targeted your job." "Baby, they targeted us because we threatened their comfortable little world of privilege. Never apologize for that." As evening approached, Michaela changed into her training clothes. Her mother raised an eyebrow but didn't object when she started her warm-up stretches in the living room. "You should rest," she suggested gently. "I need to stay ready," Michaela replied, moving through her forms with careful precision. Each stance helped ground her, pushing back the swirling uncertainty of waiting. The familiar rhythm of training settled her racing thoughts. Front stance, back stance, rising block. She focused on perfecting each movement, just as she had thousands of times before. Her muscles remembered their strength, even if her spirit still felt bruised. The living room lamp cast long shadows as she continued her silent practice. Whatever tomorrow brought, vindication or fresh battles, she would face it prepared. Her body moved through the patterns, growing stronger with each repetition, ready for whatever came next. Michaela walked through the school entrance, her shoulders squared despite the weight of eyes following her every move. The hallways hummed with whispered conversations that died as she passed. Some students clutched phones, frantically sharing messages about rumors of explosive evidence against the administration. A girl Michaela barely knew gave her a quick thumbs up before ducking into a classroom. Near the water fountain, she overheard fragments. Security footage leaked. And Halford caught on tape. The morning felt surreal after yesterday's revelation. She'd barely slept, spending hours practicing forms in her room, preparing for whatever came next. Her muscles were sore but ready. Assistant Principal Halford's office door remained conspicuously closed, blinds drawn. A cluster of teachers huddled nearby, speaking in hushed tones. One caught Michaela's eye and quickly looked away. Brett, Logan, and Kelsey were nowhere to be seen during first period. Their usual seats sat empty, amplifying the whispers. By third period, rumors circulated that Brett's father had been called to an emergency meeting with the superintendent. During lunch, Michaela sat alone, hyper-aware of movement around her. Students kept stealing glances, but the usual taunts were absent. The cafeteria buzzed with speculation about administrative misconduct and cover-ups. She was heading to fourth period when she spotted Logan lurking near the gym's back entrance. His face was flushed, pupils dilated with panic. He disappeared around the corner, and Michaela knew instantly it was bait. She could have walked away. Should have, probably. But running wouldn't solve anything. They'd just try again later. Maybe target someone else instead. Taking a deep breath, she followed. Behind the gym, Brett and Kelsey emerged from behind the dumpsters. All 3 bullies formed a loose triangle around her, their faces twisted with desperate rage. "Happy now?" Brett spat. "My dad's career is ruined because of you. You ruined your own lives," Michaela replied calmly, settling into a subtle, ready stance. "I just exposed the truth." "Truth?" Kelsey's voice cracked. "You got your little cop friend to fake evidence. Nobody was supposed to see those videos. Nobody was supposed to stop you, you mean," Michaela corrected. "Nobody was supposed to fight back." Logan's massive frame trembled. "They're talking about pressing charges. My parents might lose the house paying for lawyers. Should have thought about consequences before attacking people," Michaela said. Brett's face contorted. Consequences? I'll show you consequences. He nodded to Logan. Do it. Now. Before any cameras show up. Logan lunged forward, throwing a wild haymaker. Michaela slipped the punch easily, redirecting his momentum past her. He stumbled, off balance, and surprised by her smooth evasion. Kelsey charged in, fingernails clawing for Michaela's face. Michaela sidestepped, catching Kelsey's wrist and using her own forward drive to send her sprawling. Stay down, Michaela warned. You don't want this fight. But they were beyond listening. Logan recovered and came at her again, this time trying to grapple. Michaela broke his grip with textbook technique, then swept his legs out from under him. He hit the ground hard. Kelsey scrambled up, tears of frustration streaming down her face. She threw herself at Michaela with a flurry of desperate strikes. Michaela blocked and deflected each one, her trained reflexes making Kelsey's attacks look clumsy and amateur. Fight back, Kelsey screamed. Stop making us look stupid. You're doing that yourself, Michaela replied, catching another wild swing and pushing Kelsey away. Logan tried rushing her from behind. Without looking, Michaela dropped and rolled, letting him crash into Kelsey instead. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Finish her, Brett shouted, his voice cracking. What are you waiting for? Get up! Logan and Kelsey struggled to their feet, but their confidence was shattered. They'd never faced someone who could so easily neutralize their attacks. Someone who clearly knew exactly what she was doing. Last chance, Michaela warned them. Walk away now. Logan took a hesitant step back. Even Kelsey's rage seemed to falter as reality set in. They were completely outmatched. Cowards. Brett's face had gone purple with fury. Fine. I'll do it myself. He reached into his pocket, and Michaela tensed, but he only pulled out his phone, throwing it aside. No evidence this time. Just you and me. Don't do this, Brett, Michaela said quietly. You can't win. Watch me. He circled her slowly, hands raised in what he probably thought was a fighting stance. His footwork was sloppy, his guard full of holes. Michaela remained centered, balanced, ready. She could read his telegraphed intentions in every muscle twitch. His anger made him predictable. You ruined everything, he snarled. My dad's reputation, my future, my control. All because you couldn't just stay down. No, Brett. All because you couldn't stand someone standing up to you. With an incoherent roar of rage, Brett charged straight at her, abandoning any pretense of technique. Pure fury drove him forward, hands curled into claws, face contorted with hate. Michaela set her stance, perfectly balanced. Time seemed to slow as she watched him come, saw every flaw in his attack, every opening his blind rage created. Years of training had prepared her for exactly this moment. She waited, muscles coiled, as Brett closed the final distance between them. When Brett charged, Michaela was ready. She pivoted smoothly, grabbing his extended arm and using his own momentum to slam him into the pavement. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs with an audible whoosh. Before she could secure her position, Logan's thick arms wrapped around her neck from behind in a clumsy attempt at a chokehold. Got you now, Logan growled, squeezing with his biceps. But Michaela had drilled against chokes countless times. She tucked her chin, creating space, then gripped Logan's forearm. With practiced precision, she shifted her weight and executed a perfect hip throw. Logan's massive frame sailed over her shoulder, crashing beside Brett with a heavy thud. She maintained control of Logan's arm, transitioning into a pin. That's when Kelsey's nails raked across her back, trying to pull her off. Without releasing Logan, Michaela spun on her knee, using her free leg to sweep Kelsey's feet from under her. Kelsey toppled backward with a shriek. Students began emerging from around the corner of the gym, phones raised high to capture everything. Their shocked gasps and excited whispers created a growing buzz of energy. Brett had regained his feet, chest heaving as he circled. His earlier arrogance had morphed into desperate fury. He threw a wild haymaker aimed at Michaela's head. She slipped the punch easily, feeling the wind of it pass her ear. His poor form left him completely open. Michaela's counter was precise and controlled, a sharp strike to his floating ribs that folded him forward. As he stumbled, she caught his arm and executed a textbook takedown, driving him back to the ground. This time, she made sure to secure her position. "Stay down," she warned, but Brett bucked and thrashed beneath her. Logan charged again, but his attack was clumsy with panic. Michaela redirected him into the wall, where he bounced off and sprawled onto his back. Kelsey had retreated to the edge of the growing crowd, her earlier bravado evaporating as she watched her friends fail again and again. "Someone get her off me!" Brett shouted, still struggling. More students pressed forward, their phones recording every second. Some were live streaming, others taking photos. The audience had grown to dozens now, forming a rough circle around the fight. Brett managed to slip free and scrambled up, but his movements were becoming sluggish. The initial slam had clearly rattled him, and the shot to his ribs had taken a toll. Still, he raised his fists again, refusing to accept defeat. "Just stop," Michaela told him. "You're done." "Shut up!" He lunged forward with another sloppy combination. Michaela blocked the first two punches and ducked the third. Her footwork was crisp and efficient, making Brett's attacks look amateurish in comparison. The crowd murmured appreciatively at her technique. Logan tried to grab her legs for a takedown, but Michaela sprawled perfectly, sprawling her legs back while driving her weight down on his shoulders. He face-planted into the pavement with a grunt. "World star!" someone shouted, and nervous laughter rippled through the spectators. Kelsey finally worked up her courage for another attack, rushing in while Michaela dealt with Logan. But Michaela had been tracking all three opponents continuously. She sidestepped at the last second, letting Kelsey's momentum carry her straight into Brett. They collided and stumbled apart, cursing. The fight had been going for several minutes now, and the difference in conditioning was becoming obvious. Brett, Logan, and Kelsey were all breathing heavily, their movements becoming slower and more desperate. Michaela remained composed, her breathing controlled, her technique sharp. "Get her!" Brett wheezed. "All at once!" They surrounded her again, but their coordination was shot. Logan moved a split second too early, telegraphing their plan. Michaela exploded into action, closing the distance before Brett could react. She slipped inside his guard and executed a perfect hip throw, transitioning smoothly into a joint lock as they hit the ground. Brett's arm was trapped at a painful angle. He thrashed for a moment before the pressure became too intense. "Tap out," Michaela said calmly. "It's over." Brett's face was red with humiliation, but the joint lock left him no choice. He slapped the ground 3 times with his free hand, signaling submission. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouted commentary. Logan and Kelsey stood frozen, watching their leader surrender. The myth of their invincibility had been completely shattered. Dozens of phones captured every second of their defeat. Michaela maintained the hold, careful not to apply too much pressure now that Brett had submitted. She could hear running footsteps approaching, teachers and security finally responding to the commotion. But she knew it didn't matter anymore. The truth had been recorded from every angle. "You made me do this," she told Brett quietly. "Remember that." The sound of adult voices grew closer, shouting for students to clear the area. The crowd began to part, phones still raised high, documenting every moment of the aftermath. The security officers reached the scene first, quickly moving to separate the students. Brett was still on the ground, grimacing and holding his arm where Michaela had applied the joint lock. Logan sat slumped against the wall, while Kelsey hovered uncertainly at the edge of the crowd. "Everyone back up! Clear the area!" Officer Ramirez commanded, but the students were reluctant to move, their phones still recording. "They jumped her!" someone shouted from the crowd. "Brett and his crew attacked her first." "Yeah, we got it all on video," another voice called out. "They cornered her back here." The gathering of students had grown even larger, their angry murmurs filling the air. Many were pointing accusingly at Brett and his friends, emboldened now to speak up after witnessing Michaela's decisive victory. "Those bullies got what they deserved," a girl near the front declared loudly. "They've been terrorizing everyone all year." Assistant Principal Halford burst through the crowd, his face red with anger. "Everyone disperse immediately. This is a serious disciplinary—" His voice cut off as his phone began buzzing intensely. Looking down, his face suddenly drained of color. Officer Ramirez stepped forward, his own phone in hand. "Sir, you might want to see this." The security footage from last night just went public. He turned his screen to show a news website's breaking story. High school administrator caught on camera orchestrating student assault. The students' phones lit up with notifications as the story spread like wildfire. The security footage showed Halford clearly instructing Brett, "Make her snap first. These scholarship kids break easy. Just make sure there are no cameras this time." Halford's mouth opened and closed wordlessly as he watched his career implode in real time. Two district security officers approached him from behind. "Assistant Principal Halford," one said firmly, "you need to come with us. The superintendent is waiting in the main office." The crowd of students parted as they led Halford away. His shoulders slumped in defeat, knowing there would be no explaining away the evidence this time. Brett watched his father's departure with growing panic in his eyes. "My dad, he can't," Brett stammered, struggling to his feet. The invincible attitude he'd worn like armor was cracking apart. More administrators arrived, trying to restore order. The school nurse began checking the injured students, though Michaela had been careful not to cause any serious harm. Logan had a bloody nose from face planting, and Brett would have bruises, but nothing was broken. "Those three attacked me," Michaela stated clearly, pointing to Brett, Logan, and Kelsey. "I defended myself using controlled techniques. Everyone here saw it, and they recorded everything." Students immediately began offering to share their videos. Some had already uploaded their footage, which was spreading rapidly across social media platforms. The contrast between Michaela's disciplined self-defense and the bully's aggressive attack was stark and undeniable. Officer Ramirez nodded approvingly. "We'll need those videos as evidence, and I believe several other students have incidents to report." The dam broke. Students stepped forward one after another, describing months of intimidation and violence from Brett's crew. Each testimony built upon the last, painting a clear picture of systematic bullying protected by administrative corruption. "They slammed my head into a locker last month," a sophomore boy said quietly. "I was too scared to report it because of his dad." "They cornered me in the bathroom," a freshman girl added. "Kelsey said she'd make my life hell if I told anyone." The school principal arrived, looking grave. After a brief consultation with the officers, she made an announcement. "Brett Halford, Logan Fisk, and Kelsey Ward, you are suspended pending expulsion hearings. Officers will escort you to gather your things. Your parents have been contacted." Kelsey burst into tears, her tough facade crumbling. Logan stared at the ground, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Brett looked shell-shocked, his world of privilege and protection dissolving around him. "Michaela," the principal continued, "you are fully cleared of any wrongdoing. Your academic record will be restored, including your advanced placement classes. We owe you an apology for how this situation was handled." Michaela's mother arrived, having been called by the school. She rushed to embrace her daughter, then turned to face the principal with fierce determination. "We'll be filing formal complaints," she stated firmly. "Not just about the assault, but about the systematic discrimination and cover-up attempts." "We understand," the principal replied soberly. "The district is launching a full investigation. Criminal charges are being considered for both the students involved and Mr. Halford." The crowd began to disperse as Brett, Logan, and Kelsey were led away. Some students patted Michaela's shoulder or gave her thumbs up as they passed. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Respect and admiration replaced the previous whispers and stares. Officer Ramirez approached Michaela and her mother. "You showed remarkable restraint," he said quietly, "both in how long you endured their harassment and in how carefully you defended yourself today. That takes real discipline." Michaela nodded, feeling the tension of the past weeks finally beginning to release. Her mother kept a protective arm around her shoulders, but Michaela stood tall and straight. She watched as police cars arrived to take statements and collect evidence, knowing that real consequences would finally follow. The morning breeze carried away the last echoes of the fight. Michaela took a deep breath, feeling it fill her lungs completely for the first time since arriving at this school. No more looking over her shoulder. No more calculating every move. No more enduring hatred and prejudice protected by corruption. Standing beside her mother in the growing morning light, Michaela felt the weight of injustice lifting from her shoulders. She had faced the storm and emerged stronger, not just protecting herself, but helping to expose a system that had enabled cruelty for far too long. 2 weeks later, Michaela stood backstage at the community center's main hall, adjusting her blazer. The renovated building hummed with excitement as hundreds of community members filled the seats. Fresh paint brightened the walls, and new training equipment lined the edges of the space, visible symbols of the change she had helped create. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Ready, baby?" Michaela nodded, touching the note cards in her pocket. Through the curtain, she could hear the superintendent addressing the crowd. "Demonstrates the importance of standing up against systemic injustice," the superintendent was saying. "Thanks to generous community donations, this facility will now house our district's first comprehensive youth self-defense and anti-bullying program." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Michaela recognized many faces in the crowd. Students who had shared their stories of harassment, parents who had demanded accountability, and teachers who had finally found the courage to speak up about what they had witnessed. "Leading this program," the superintendent continued, "will be someone who has shown us all what true strength looks like. Someone who defended herself and others with discipline and restraint, even in the face of tremendous pressure." Officer Ramirez appeared beside Michaela, holding a polished wooden plaque. His eyes crinkled with pride. "You ready to make history, champ?" "And now," the superintendent's voice rose, "please welcome this year's recipient of the Regional Courage Award, Michaela Rivers." The applause swelled as Michaela stepped onto the stage. Camera flashes sparkled across the audience. She saw her former advanced placement teachers beaming from the front row. Several rows back, the freshman boy she had protected from Brett's crew gave her a thumbs up. The superintendent stepped aside, allowing Officer Ramirez to approach the podium. He held up the plaque, its engraved surface catching the stage lights. "Michaela Rivers," he announced clearly, "for exceptional courage in the face of adversity, for using skill with wisdom, and for inspiring systemic change in our community." He turned to her, speaking more quietly. "You showed them all what justice really looks like." Michaela accepted the award, feeling its solid weight in her hands. The applause continued, punctuated by cheers and whistles. She stepped to the microphone, waiting for the noise to settle. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and clear. "But I want to be very clear about something. I never wanted to fight anyone. The room grew silent, hanging on her words. I came to this school hoping to learn, to make friends, to build a future. When I was attacked, I could have fought back immediately. I had the training. I had the skill. She paused, meeting eyes across the crowd. But I chose restraint over and over because I believed there had to be a better way. Heads nodded throughout the audience. Parents wrapped arms around their children. What happened to me wasn't just about physical bullying. It was about a system that protected abusers because of their privilege. It was about administrators who buried evidence instead of confronting racism. It was about everyone who looked away because speaking up felt too dangerous. In the third row, she spotted the Latino freshman who had almost been Brett's next victim. He sat straighter now, unafraid. Change didn't come from my fists, Michaela continued. It came from students brave enough to share their stories, from Officer Ramirez refusing to ignore corruption, from parents and teachers finally saying, enough. She gestured to the newly equipped facility around them. And now this center will help ensure no student has to face bullying alone. The superintendent stepped forward, holding up a document, which is why the school board has unanimously approved the Rivers Protocol, new district-wide guidelines for preventing and addressing bullying. These policies focus on accountability, transparency, and protecting those who report abuse. Fresh applause erupted. Michaela saw her mother wiping tears from her eyes. The Youth Self-Defense Program, Michaela announced, will teach more than just physical techniques. We'll focus on confidence, de-escalation, and the responsibility that comes with knowing how to fight. She smiled slightly. And yes, I'll be leading the advanced classes myself. Several students in the audience pumped their fists. They had already signed up for training. But self-defense is just the beginning, she continued. This center will also host support groups, conflict resolution workshops, and community discussions about addressing systemic racism in our schools. Because real change requires more than just stopping bullies. It requires transforming the culture that enables them. Officer Ramirez stepped forward again. Thanks to additional funding, we're also establishing a student advocacy council. Michaela will help select representatives from all grades to ensure concerns about bullying and discrimination are addressed immediately. The superintendent nodded. No more cover-ups. No more looking the other way. No more students feeling powerless. Michaela gripped the podium, her voice growing stronger. I stood my ground not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I refused to let injustice win. Every student deserves to feel safe at school. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. She looked out across the sea of faces. Students who had once whispered about her now smiled with admiration. Parents who had believed Halford's lies now stood to applaud her words. The community had transformed, awakened to its own potential for change. This award, she held up the plaque, belongs to everyone who chose to stand up, speak out, and fight for what's right. Together, we proved that justice is stronger than corruption. Truth is stronger than lies. And courage is stronger than fear. The applause rose to a thunderous level. People stood, cheering and embracing. Michaela stepped to the edge of the stage, feeling the energy of the moment wash over her. She wasn't the frightened new student anymore, trying to navigate a hostile school. She stood tall, unbroken, and victorious, ready to help others find their own strength. Her mother's words from weeks ago echoed in her mind. Sometimes the hardest fights aren't about throwing punches. They're about standing your ground until truth prevails. Looking out at the cheering crowd, Michaela knew she had done exactly that. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.